We just finished the cylinder command. Let's hide that. This is a rule direction cylinder. It's straight. I'll hide this and make this the in-work object, and we'll hide our measurement. So we're going to do an explicit sweep surface. I'm going to create a spline on the fly under wireframe. Let's see, where's my splines hiding? Why is spline not here? It's under Essentials. I'm just going to go ahead and use spline here. I'm going to create a spline, and normally on V5 you click here, right click to create a point on the fly. We can't do that. What we have to do is add a point, insert, create a point. Let's do one on a plane. I'm going to make this a two-dimensional spline, and we're just going to keep adding points. Ah, dang it. Try that again. I hit escape to get out of that. Create a point on this plane. Come up. Create another point. I'm just kind of randomly putting points on here. I'm using the YZ plane repetitively. One's up, one's down. Just to get the concept here. Insert a point on the YZ plane again. And we'll kind of come up a little bit. Select OK. Now, when I go to the sweep command, when I go to the sweep, when I use the sweep command under surface, you have your sweep command. The first one is explicit. Okay, there's several different types, but we're using explicit. Under explicit, it says to grab a profile. So I grabbed this profile, but that's not a profile. That's actually my guide curve. The profile is going to be whatever you want to use for a profile to define the shape of it. This defines the direction. So it could be square, it could be circular, it could be whatever shape you want, and it will follow that curve. That's what explicit is. So I don't have a circle, I'm going to have to create a circle. Let's try this. Let's create on this plane. No. Well, I could do it. Let's create a circle. Well, that's not in the spirit of this class. The spirit of this class is to do everything in wireframe, so we'll go to wireframe and create a circle. Let's do a circle at the end of this point on the YZ plane as a support. It will make it a full circle. And we'll do 0.1 radius, so it's 0.2 circle, and we can go back to the surface sweep explicit command, and for the profile it will be that circle. And this spine, hit preview, and voila. The thing is, I'm going to middle click on that, just try and center it to the screen so I can zoom up on it. You'll notice when I'm rotating this around, the way it's getting chopped also is getting chopped at that same angle down here on this end. Okay, and it's relative to the spine. So it's trying to hold normalcies to what it wants and keep it straight up and down as it's going along the spine here. I don't want that in this case, so just for kicks I'm going to hide this. So I can compare the difference. And with surfacing, a lot of times you make several surfaces and compare the surfaces together to see which one you like. So in this case, I really don't like the circle itself. What I want is to start a circle that's normal to this curve at that point. And how I would do that is to generate a plane using normal to curve. Normal to curve is going to put a plane right in the middle, perpendicular to the curve. The default is the middle. It's the only one that has a default middle. So I use that feature a lot, creating things to create a cut right down the middle. But in this case, I don't want it down the middle. I'm going to use this point and select OK. And what I'll do is I'll use that plane to create a sketch. Okay? Or when I create my circle on that point, I will use this plane so that I'm creating a circle that's on the same plane that's perpendicular to the curve at that same point. Select OK. And now let's try and do a sweep surface. The circle I created is my profile. This curve is my spline is my guide curve, and when I preview that, I can say OK. I can change the color of this to, you guys that know me know I'm going right to my salmon color. Always thinking of fishing. So that's the difference between that one and the first one I created. And you can kind of see how the ends wind up being different. Alright, probably the most common one I would use is that second technique. But if you were splitting something, like if this surface really wanted to be split at that plane wherever it's going to be, then that might be the technique you use. They have multiple ways to do things. Sometimes you just got to try multiple techniques to see how they differ. Alright, that was the explicit sweep. I think the people that like or that do this a lot use this other technique instead. I'm going to hide this. And I'm going to create a new geometrical set. And I'm going to rename it to spline. What I'll do is I'll move that into the spline. That way I can see it and use it for multiple things. So that spline is going to be a feature I use for spline sweep, explicit, and circle sweep. So what's the difference between a circle sweep and explicit? If I go to sweep, this curve is already highlighted. I want to go to curve, or sorry, I want to use the circle. And the type I want to use is center to radius. Center to radius, I just simply grab this curve as my center and key in the radius in the pop-up window, 0.2. Hit tab, preview that. That's identical to the last tube I created in the explicit. So the circle type is going to by default give you a circle or a tube that is perpendicular to the spine. So no matter where I cut this spine, any plane perpendicular to the spine will give you a perfect circle. So any plane perpendicular to the spine intersecting the surface will give you a perfect circle. Alright, so that's the difference between the circle type and the explicit type. If I change this radius to 0.5 and hit preview, oh, it's getting pretty big. Let's try 1. And I'm trying to get it to crash. You see this radius? eventually it can only get so small. So if I change it to 1.5 inches, see how small it's getting? And then pretty soon, once I get to past 2.5 inches, I'll get this error. I want you to make a snapshot of that error and put it in your Word doc to explain why this error comes up. The reason why that error comes up again is this radius has zeroed out, meaning that this radius up here, when I'm offsetting it parallel, hit a certain point where it no longer could create itself because the radius became something less than 0. So in this case, when I tried a 2-inch radius, this 2-inch radius, it's saying, hey, see these isoparameters here? They're going to hit each other. They're going to cross through each other trying to go down to a 0 radius. Once it goes beyond the 0 radius, the isoparams cross, and you see the big gap up here. It's not able to handle this. That's called the outer normal inverted error when you see this. All right, that's an outer normal inverted error because the isoparameters crisscross through each other because the radius became less than 0 as it started offsetting in this direction. So I could come into, oh shoot, I put that all in the spline. That was supposed to be here in this one. Okay, so I'll double click on that. Some things you can try, it's not going to work for this because I've got less than a 0 error, but sometimes it gets twisted on itself with the 3-dimensional curve. You can try and remove these and see if it can fix itself. Okay, so you got a little bit better, but there's nothing I'm going to be able to do to fix that. Just once it goes less than 0, it can only do so much. Okay, so it'll try and help you out, but in this case, it can't help you when you go less than 0. There's not a physical possible way to do that. So that being the case, I will just set this back to 1 inch just to. I've had this happen before too, where it won't let me go back. It's like I forever damaged it. I'll come back. Let's try and delete that out. Preview that. I put the twist areas back on, select OK. Alright, sometimes it's just as easy just to start it all over and recreate it. Alright, even at this is probably getting pretty tight. So as a designer, you need to check what you're doing, making sure that, yeah, CATIA could do it, but is it really feasible for me to make a part that's going to bend this much? Anyways, that is your demo on the sweep command using Explicit and the circles.